Virtuoso, and I am here at Simmons College in Boston, and I am here attending an AAUW event for leadership development and networking. So come in with me and enjoy.
This event would not be made possible without the generous grant from the Coca-Cola Foundation, but we have other very fabulous partners in the room. Most importantly, we also have the Mayor's Office of Women's Advancement, which is truly the embodiment of Mayor Walsh's commitment to advancing and supporting women in the city of Boston. And we are very happy to have had a fruitful multi-year partnership with them in ending the gender pay gap in Boston and also the leadership gap as well. And I'm excited. I want to give a thank you to Tanya Del Rio, who is their fabulous executive director. She'll be up in a second. And also Brenda Callahan, who is their policy and communications manager. I really want to thank Simmons College. We would not have this glorious space without them. And here's a very fun fact. Simmons is now the highest ranking higher ed institution for gender parity in leadership, which is pretty incredible. And we want to thank Sasha Goodfriend, who's the Assistant Director of Communications and Public Affairs. She's been the point of contact here, but also Dr. Deborah Perez, who's the Senior Vice President of Organizational Culture, Inclusion, and Equity, and she'll be our keynote. I'd like to thank She Geeks Out. She Geeks Out's mission is to educate, promote, and support diverse and inclusive companies and organizations. We'd also like to thank We Ceremony, the digital platform that uses storytelling to empower and celebrate women of color. Mass TLC, another thank you. They are the largest and most powerful technology association in the region, and their mission is to accelerate growth, innovation, and development of an inclusive tech ecosystem in Massachusetts. And last but not least, I want to thank Just Us Gals. They're an entrepreneurship, career, and conscious lifestyle blog with a focus on female founders in Boston and beyond. So thank you again. This is going to be a very exciting evening. We are going to be hearing from Tanya in a second, Dr. Perez, and then there'll be two breakouts. One will be, we haven't figured out the room, we have to figure out the head count, but it'll be here in the classroom. The two breakouts, one is our AAUW Work Smart for salary negotiation, and the other one is our leadership development action plan workshop. And then after that, we have our networking here. During the talk and for the workshop, we will, the bar will be closed. But when it is open, you all have your tickets, so please use them wisely or give them to a friend that you've made during the networking session. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tanya. Thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. If we don't mind, I'd like to just have a quick second of silence for the victims of the mass shooting in California. Thank you so much. Well, I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see many familiar faces. I'm happy to see new faces. It's really good to see you. We are here to do three things. The first one is to celebrate each other because we are already leaders, whether we know it or not, and being here in this room is an expression of that. So you know that you want to work on yourself, you know that you want to get better. That's, I'm assuming, why you have showed up here, and we hope that we can deliver that. So first of all, I think we need to be celebrating each other for being already committed to ourselves and our improvement continuously. Second of all, we want to support each other, right? It's a beautiful thing when, for me, at least seeing a group of women that are coming together in support of each other, and really, we couldn't have done this type of gathering in a better space than in Simmons University. That's, part of its mission is dedicating to having women support each other. And I just love every time I walk in here, the feel of it, the vibe. It's just the perfect place to do this. So we're going to celebrate each other. We're going to support each other. But lastly, and very excitingly, especially following a day like, was it yesterday, election day? A couple days ago. It was on my birthday too, so how could I forget? But really, following an election like the one we had, where we elected 100 women to the U.S. Congress, it's never been done before. And so many firsts, right? right, including one for Massachusetts electing the first Black woman congressperson in the history. So we want to follow in the example of all those female leaders that are putting themselves forward, they're putting their names out there to work on issues that matter to them, but that matter to really all of us. That's empowerment, and that's something that we want to achieve for ourselves and for everybody that's in this room. So remember, celebrate, support, empower. That's why we're here. And now I just want to send you a message for what I consider to be the best male ally that I have ever met, and just happens to be my boss, and I'm incredibly proud to work for Mayor Marty Walsh. He believes in male allyship. He believes in equity for women, for people of color, and he believes in that and acts on that every day. So for me, it's an incredible joy to work for a person like that, that's really pushing forward these values every single day, and he just sends a message of support and of pride in the work that we're doing, especially the partnership that we have with AAUW, so thank you. Lastly, I just want to tell you a little bit about that partnership and how powerful it's been for us, but really for Boston. So through our partnership with AAUW, and especially if you go to the salary negotiation piece of the breakouts, you're gonna become a part of really like a movement of almost 8,000 women that have taken this salary negotiation workshop, and then most of them actually have made an ask or have taken an action that has led to economic empowerment. So that's really exciting. It's one piece of the puzzle. Women are learning how to navigate a system, unfair as it is, but I want to tell you that on the other end of that, our office is working with employers and through advocating for legislation to make sure that system becomes a little more fair every day, or that, and that work is constant. But in Boston, we have more than 200 employers that have signed on to a pledge with the mayor to say, great, we're gonna measure our wage gap and we're gonna do something about it. We're gonna start closing that so that when all the women that are now empowered and know how to negotiate a salary are coming in and they're making asks, the employer is ready for that and understands the importance of that and pays them what they're worth. So that's a little bit of the work that we're doing in the office on the economic empowerment side, and we hope that it is useful to you. We take feedback. If there's something that you have concerns with or questions or you just want to learn more, you can email bostonwomen@boston.gov. bostonwomen@boston.gov, or go to boston.gov/women. You can find my phone, my email, everybody on my staff, and we love to hear from people that engage with our programs. And now I'm going to introduce Dr. Deborah Joy Perez, who's going to talk a little bit with us. She's incredible. She just joined Simmons and assuming the position of Senior Vice President of Organizational Culture, Inclusion, and Equity here at Simmons.
Great, thank you. So, gosh, I'm pretty awesome. Right here, somebody read my bio. So can I use this?
I only read half of it.
No, this is not working? No? Okay. All right, so I'm confined to this table. And typically I like to walk around. And, I say that kind of like I'm awesome because I think each of us are awesome in our own way, and we often don't take the time to acknowledge that, right? To acknowledge our awesomeness. I mean, we are really changing the world, right? And we have, what a night on Tuesday night, right? I mean, there's some things that we're not happy about, but most of what happened, I'm telling you, we have a lot to be proud of as women. So my topic, and I was asked to talk about women's leadership and to say a few words of advice. And rather than talk about leadership, I'm just going to show you what I've been able to do using my skills as a leader. And most of my work, as you heard from Tanya, has been in the area of advancing equity and inclusion. So this is my first formal foray into higher education. So one kind of thing I would say to the group is that you can transition in any field you'd like to transition to. Because you've not done something before doesn't mean you can't do it. So lesson number one is, go for what feels right, yeah? And do what you don't even imagine for yourself, right? Okay, so if I had only stayed in philanthropy, I mean, let me tell you, philanthropy is great. I had a great career there, 20 years. If you listen to NPR, you know the 3 foundations I've worked with, right? So, and I could have easily stayed another 20 years. What happened for me and what kind of motivated me to come to higher education was November 2016, right? November 2016 was a transformative moment for a lot of people. For me, it said, I have a bigger role to play in advancing and supporting public sector leadership. And I want to take a stand in doing that because it's important to me. So I made a transition to academia. So I'll say I've been a lifelong learner and lifelong commitment to women's leadership. I'm a mentor. I've been a mentor. I mentor right now. I just had a mentoring session today. I do a lot of mentoring, and I believe that for everything that we're given, we must give back double, right? I'm a strong believer in advancing equity in all aspects, whether it be advancing equity for women, for underrepresented minorities, for the disabled, for veterans, whoever it is in any class that's considered underrepresented. I see it as a personal responsibility to do something, to act and speak on their behalf. So I had a lot of experience in research and accountability measurement and research and evaluation, and I say that because what gets measured gets done, right? And I think Massachusetts is a place that, by having this law that says you cannot ask about past experience and past salary, it actually helps us advance the effort of equity, and we need to measure that, right? So the university, the one you're sitting in, is over 100 years old. It is known for its excellence in higher education. It's among the top 10 colleges, women's colleges in the country. It has a very centered focus on students and their success and a commitment to social justice. That's one of the reasons that I was so attracted to coming to Simmons. And within that work, we have set a target of 2022 to achieve the transformation of becoming the most inclusive campus in New England, applying these 6 strategies. And I'm not going to read them because I have a lot of other things I want to say. So many of you, maybe, how many people have seen this slide before or something similar, right? So I think it's important to be really clear that we're not talking about applying the same to everyone, which is equality, but that we're really trying to take a targeted universalism approach, which is to figure out what is needed for each specific group. And so equity as opposed to equality. And there's tons of evidence, and I don't think anyone here needs to be convinced, but I think we live in a world in which others still doubt the value of diversity. And to those, I would say that pick any Supreme Court decision around affirmative action, and you will find substantial evidence, whether it be University of Michigan in 2002, Texas University case in 2015, and the current case at Harvard University. There's not an amicus brief that doesn't demonstrate that the value of diversity is not just good for the diverse, it's good for the entire student body. We simply think and act and live better when we surround ourselves with more diverse perspectives. So it does all of these things and ultimately leads to better lives, better decision making, and greater creativity and more sustainability. So this is the unit that I'm leading now. I've been here 7 weeks, so I say to folks, give me some time, but we have some ambitious goals, and those goals are around who we are as an organization, how we live and work, and who we're becoming. And in the midst of doing this work, we recognize that, and what I say to folks is that I'm not the person that's going to transform Simmons University to be the most inclusive and campus in New England. What I'm charged with is to create the enabling conditions for that to happen. The execution of that depends on partnership across the university. So I just talked a little bit about some of the work I've been able to do and the leadership roles that I've been able to exhibit. I'm going to say a little bit more about each of these. And the reason I want to highlight in particular that each of us, when we move forward, I personally feel that we have a responsibility to bring from behind, right? So to the extent that we can strengthen and support diversity, for example, in my case, around faculty, I'm going to talk about some of that work. And I've done that work in many of the foundations I've worked with these organizations. So the first is Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. When I started at Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, about 70% of the grantees would get grants again, and there was very little diversity in our pool. We started this program, and the number one criteria is you had to be new to the foundation. So we were only accepting applications for those who had never gotten funding before. And that was an innovation to the foundation. The Latina Researcher Network was a network that we started in 2014, essentially creating a space for researchers at various stages, from pre-doctoral, postdoctoral, professor, associate professor, and tenure, to come together to find community. There are about, I think it's 2,000 women across the country, all on some level of the professoriate in this network. So the membership in the American Evaluation Association, which I just returned from in Cleveland, is disproportionately white with very few people of color. So we started a program at the Annie E. Casey Foundation to train folks with PhDs in evaluation, and we called it Leaders in Equitable Evaluation and Diversity. And this is the first cohort in inclusive leadership, social justice, global engagement, interprofessional collaboration. So this particular project, some of you might know, it's My Brother's Keeper, and the work that we were able to do there is to really identify some of the gaps in the research done on boys and men of color. So the case in point is when we launched this program, we did a contract with a research firm, and we asked them to help us identify interventions for boys and men of color, and all they came back to us with was a list of problems, deficits. So there's no asset framing, nothing about community. So this was a shift in the way the work was done. So these are just some of the principles that we came up with in that work. So now I'm going to move a little forward to just talk about some of the challenges when we're talking about underrepresentation. So how many here are first-generation college graduates? Like you're the first in your family to go to college. Right, look around. This is a really important cohort that doesn't get a lot of attention when we think about diversity, but actually the data shows that if your parents had a college education, the likelihood of you going forward and getting a college education by the time you're a sophomore in high school for a bachelor's is 50%, for a master's is 65%, and for a doctoral program is 73%. But if your parents had less than a high school education, the likelihood that you could go on and get a bachelor's degree is 6%. So, thinking about disparities, like who's being represented, who's included. And we know that first-generation college students are underserved in other ways. They're more likely to have student debt, they're more likely to have remedial or need of remedial courses. So there's a lot of challenges with being first gen. So this is one of the areas that I'm currently working on in the work we're doing at Simmons. Another challenge we have is who's teaching the courses. To what extent can we diversify our faculty? Only 1 in 5 nationally faculty are faculty of color. The research that I funded at Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and continue to fund at Annie E. Casey Foundation was with Ruth Zambrana, who's at the University of Maryland. It was a study of 600 underrepresented minorities in research-intensive universities. She just published this book 2 months ago called The Toxic Ivory Tower that looks at questions of mental and physical health of people of color in higher education. Other work that I've been involved in, working with presidents and provosts across the country. How do we change the landscape and the narrative around diversity in higher education? So a fundamental belief, my belief, and the work that we're doing at Simmons has to do with our best work happens when everybody's engaged, when everybody's involved in the conversation. It's important to see people and honor their experience at all levels, as I said, disability, ability, language, culture, etc. So, leadership. So, lesson number 1, or 15, depending on what I've said that resonates with you. Most people don't listen with the intent of understanding, they listen with the intent to reply. So here's my advice. No one's ever learned anything from speaking. So be the presence of listening. So a leadership approach is get to know people and their interests, what motivates them, what concerns they have, promote new collaborations and partnership, advocate for the constituents in your community, create, as I said, those enabling conditions for success, invest in professional development, and bring complementary skills to a strong team. I'm a researcher by training, and I very much believe in the adaptive management cycle, which is you identify, you explore, set goals, you look, you make changes, etc. So learn what has and hasn't worked in your organizations, assess the needs and identify priorities, co-create solutions with the constituents in your community, find resources to support those efforts, and build on an already strong and shared vision for what you're trying to do. In my case, it's for organizational culture and inclusion. So again, any success I've had as a woman, as a leader, as a lesbian, as a Latinx person, as Puerto Rican, as a person from Trenton, New Jersey, all of those things comes from this motive, this kind of feeling that I have something to contribute. I have a belief in myself that I have the power wherever you are, wherever you're situated. There's something you can do for someone else. I often say to folks that the best thing about having power is giving it away. So when you mentor others, you give them your power. I have as I said, a mentee. I'm always pushing her out in front. There's people, and I react very strongly. If people are only talking to me in a meeting, I will just shut that down and I will turn to my mentee, right? This is my niece, one of them. I have 6 sisters, 2 brothers, and 32 nieces and nephews. A big family. So, one of the things I often talk about, and I'm closing here, so don't get nervous, I know we have to go to the sessions, is that it's important for those of us who are in leadership positions to tell our story. Because people look at us and they say, wow, look at what you've accomplished. You heard my bio, wow, But let me just say, life ain't been no crystal staircase, right? We have all, gone through our own struggles, right? I'm first generation college graduate. My parents had a 2nd and 3rd grade education. I started my career in a nonprofit working in a shelter for battered women. I went on to do a lot of things, so I'm going to tell you this one story, okay? And the story is, I wish I could move. Okay. So, when I was in high school, my guidance counselor, Mrs. Garces, was the first person in my life to say, Deborah, you're smart, you should go to college. She handed me a college application. She said, go home, have your parents sign it. My parents couldn't really read or write, 2nd, 3rd grades, but they were always signing stuff for us for school, so I got my dad to sign it. On this application, it says you must submit with $25. So I went to Mrs. Garces and I said, I'm sorry, I can't go to college, I don't have $25. We were poor, there were 11 people living in my house, low income. I mean, we sat and we had government cheese. I don't know if anybody remembers government cheese. Government cheese and peanut butter. So we were low income, poor. And so I said, Mrs. Garces, I can't go to college, I don't have $25. Mrs. Garces looked at me, she said, yes, you can. She reached into her purse and she wrote me a check for $25, right? So I wrote an article in the Trenton Times, kind of acknowledging that $25 gift. And in it, I tell the story of what happened after that $25. So the $25 obviously didn't keep me in college, but it was the gift of encouragement. It was the gift that somebody believed that I had something to contribute. So from that, I went to Douglas College, Women's College, to graduate from Rutgers University. I went on to get my master's in public administration and women's studies and social science at the University of Kent in Canterbury, England. Came back, did a master's in public administration. I was sitting down writing this op-ed letter. I was finishing my PhD at Harvard University. $25, okay? So Mrs. Garces saw the article. She was in her 80s. She called them, got my number, we had dinner, okay? So we had dinner and I got to say thank you. And I said, Mrs. Garces, I'm sure I'm not the only person that you helped along the way. She said, no, Deborah, but you're the first to come back, right? So my point is, you can hear, I can hear and feel in your emotion, that each of us, we are not just kind of breaking our own path. We are breaking a path for those behind us, right? So I'll close with 2 quotes that I love, and one is kind of one that I'm sure everyone knows. But I want you to indulge me for a minute and just close your eyes. Will you do that? This speaks to my point earlier about our own fabulousness. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. It's not just in some of us, it is in all of us. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. That is the power that you have. Okay. So, and my other quote that I love, and maybe you know this as well, I did not set out in my life thinking that I would ever end up in philanthropy. Like if somebody had said to me, you're going to work for a $11 billion foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and you're going to give away $350 million in your 9 years there, I would have said, you're out of your mind, right? I did not set out to do that, but that was my destiny, right? I knew that I wanted to make a difference, and I felt that it gave me purpose. So the other quote is from a sage named Patanjali, and this is, and you've heard this, I'm sure, in your life. When you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. It's hard, but it doesn't feel like work. So, and the quote is, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds, your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. So I wish you purpose, courage, hope, and a lot of money.